Welcome to the UIF Community Podcast. Before we get started, please keep in mind that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. The views and opinions expressed are those of the individual presenters and do not necessarily reflect UIF Corporation or its affiliates.
As-Salaam Alaikum and greeting listeners. Welcome to another episode of the UIF Community Podcast, where we're going to dive into meaningful conversations that inspire and educate. Today, we have a very special guest, Habeeb Quadri. Habib's an educator, author, and a community leader. He was awarded National Principal of the Year in his school district in Illinois. As the superintendent of the MCC Academy, he's made a lasting impact through his work in the field of education and youth development. Whether you're a parent or you're pursuing a career in the education field or serve in a leadership capacity, this conversation is a must listen. However, before we dive into our guest interview with Habib, I'd like Ijaz Hussain to share his thoughts on current news stories that are impacting the housing markets. Ijaz, please share your thoughts with us.
Hey, As-Salaam Alaikum, everybody. Umar, I think that was a great introduction of Habib. I'll get into it more when I introduce him, and he's ready to answer questions for us. But yeah, let me go ahead and give an economic update. Obviously, these updates are time sensitive, and we're recording this session March 20th, 2025. So my thoughts are based on what we are seeing in the markets currently. As you know, Omar, we work in management for the residential team at UIF, and we get to see a lot of data coming in. I personally do a lot of reading and listening to a lot of CEOs from big real estate companies like Zillow and Redfin and so forth to see what their economists are saying. So my thoughts really are a culmination of not just our data, but also listening to other experts in the field. But it's very clear, first quarter so far has been very challenging for the housing markets, for us as well as the industry in general. And mostly it's because rates and inventory. It comes down to that. Rates have not helped much. They have not gone up, thankfully, but they have not gone down either. And then also housing inventory still is very challenged. Many markets, there are not that many homes available for sale, and homes are still going up in price, maybe a little bit, but they are still heading up, and we feel it. And some markets, they are coming down as well, where Florida and some of the Austin, where those overbuild prices went up quite a bit, and now they're actually coming down. But the main issue facing the housing industry right now is the rates need to come down some. Inventory needs to go up. But what is also not helping is the talk of all these tariffs and mass deportations that the government is, the Trump administration, actually, I should say, keeps in the news right now. And, tariffs will increase prices for goods that and products that builders have to buy, and they're coming from other countries. And those prices will lead to higher new construction, new build prices. And then many of these builders also employ immigrant workers, many of them who are scared to come to work, from what I'm reading. And the talk of all this mass deportations is also hurting the sector in general. So anyways, bottom line, under Trump 2.0, these things are really impacting the housing industry, especially in the first quarter. Now, we're also very hopeful going into the second quarter, because we do believe that the mortgage rates will start going down a little bit. We are seeing some evidence of that right now, and mainly for one big reason, where they think that unemployment is going to go up, may lead to recession. And if that happens, you're going to see rates come down, thereby people who do have jobs and who can buy homes will probably get some really good deal in that regard. And, UIF being the number one home financing company in the faith-based side, we're very hopeful that our spring home buying season, can't speak for everybody in the industry, but because of all the amazing work our reps have done and the amazing Google surveys, 5-star surveys we've gotten, and our pricing structure and so forth, we are looking forward to a very solid year coming up. But again, we'll have to wait and see. My advice, typically, people always ask me this question: so do you think I should buy right now? I'm pretty much on the record saying that, hey, You should buy a primary home whenever you need to buy a primary home. You can't delay that. You can delay investment properties, but don't delay that. And start getting your pre-qualifications together right now. If you're looking to buy a home sometime this year, contact one of our award-winning sales reps at UIF, and Umar is going to mention at the end our website and contact information, but do get pre-qualified, because the first round, I feel a lot of desperate sellers are going to start listing their homes because they have been sitting on homes for a couple of years. So when they start putting their homes on the market in April, May, after Ramadan especially, you should be able to quickly take advantage and make an offer if you like the home and it meets your financial parameters, if you will. So yeah, start getting ready, get your paperwork ready, get your pre-qualification letters ready, and then start shopping if you're looking to buy a home. So that's kind of like my opening thoughts, Umar. I don't know what you're seeing. You're in Texas, I'm in Chicago. Are you seeing anything differently over there, or what do you see?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the Dallas housing market. It's gotten to the point where there's so many homes listed for sale now. There's just a glut, and buyers are, I think, just waiting to see if rates will go down. Some people are obviously stepping in and buying properties as they need to, but you're not seeing what we saw, 2020, 2021, and that phase where just because the home prices are very high, rates are still high on the high end, even though we're kind of in the mid to high 6% range, generally speaking, in the industry. But yeah, I think people are waiting, and let's see. That kind of leads me to the question I wanted to ask you was, right now, I mean, we're recording as of March 20th. Tariffs have been kind of the talk of the entire economy since Trump came into office. So just want to get your thoughts, Ijaz, on tariffs and how that may impact the housing market and the entire economy in general.
Yeah, well, it's very hard to handicap, where a lot of people initially were thinking, tariffs is just a way of Mr. Trump trying to get people to the table and get some quick, benefits out of countries that, in his mind, who have not been fair to the United States over the last so many years. And it's just a scare tactic, and push comes to shove, he's going to roll that back because he also knows the impact that can be on the housing markets and other sectors. I'm not so sure anymore. I'm beginning to think that, based on the comments of the Treasury Secretary who he appointed, that the current administration really are not just playing hardball, but their intention is to really help the Main Street, like they call it. And they're not really caring as much about Wall Street anymore, the stock market anymore. They're more concerned about Main Street and making things affordable. They don't mind if the unemployment goes up. I don't think they mind if the recession is triggered, because they think there might be some pain in the beginning that the economy will have to suffer. And before rates go down and it starts improving housing and other markets. That's a gamble that they're going to take. Sometimes these gambles may work out, sometimes it may not work out, and that's very, very hard. I mean, to comment on the stock market, I've been a student of the stock market for 30 some years. I study very closely, and we've had a 10% sell-off, and the big names, the mags, the Magnificent Seven, they used to call it, they've traded down anywhere from 10 to 20%. But the market is very, very wobbly right now, and we could see a bigger sell-off going into April or May if this tariff and this other concerns don't abate. So I don't know. It's we're living in definitely uncertain times, and we all are sort of watching the movie together, if you will. We're going to have to wait and see how this all plays out. But as I tell our team on every Tuesday call, the best way to deal with this situation is to sort of park this in a bucket we don't control, focus on things we control. This is just, I think this is true for, I think, anybody who's listening to this podcast. I mean, the more you can just avoid the noise around you, economically speaking, so to speak, things that you can't really change much or you can't really impact much. Just avoid that. Focus on how you can do your job the best. Because even if you work for a company or you run your business, if you do a great job at that, you will not be the first person getting laid off or person getting fired or terminated. The worst employees go first. So if you really pick up your game, you do well, and the company sees you as a true asset, then you don't have to worry about it. Similarly, if you're running a business and you really are dialed in and focused on what you can do best, that's all we can do. So that's how we run UIF. That's our specialty, I guess. Do good, be good, and at the end of the day, it all comes down to that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate your insights on that, Ijaz.
With that said, Omar, I think we should just go ahead and get to Habib. I'm very excited to talk to Habeeb Quadri, and
Likewise.
let's move forward.
All right. We have our special guest with us now, Habeeb Quadri. Jaz, you know Habib personally since you both reside in Chicago. Please go ahead and lead off our discussion.
Okay, thank you, Umar. Yes, it is really a pleasure. I mean, I've known Habib at a personal level, and also along the way, he's been a client of our company and so forth. So, but I've always admired Habib a little bit from afar, just what he's been able to give back to the community. Many of us can talk a big game, but honestly, I feel there are very, very few like Habib who actually deliver. And he and his just him choosing the career when everybody in our community is in a way forced to, hey, go become a doctor, go become an engineer, go become this. Choosing a line of education that itself tells you a lot about the person, that it's all about giving back, because obviously it's never about the money when you choose the education industry. So it's really a privilege. And I know Habib, his family, his cousins. So yes, we do go way back in Chicago. So Habib, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to our podcast here. And I wanted to start off, Habib, a little bit about you, in your own words, talking about your own life journey. What made you decide on this career, and so on and so forth. So go ahead, Habib, please.
Thank you guys for having me. So I'm really excited and I appreciate this. Thank you for the introduction. For education, it was, I got to give credit to my parents. They were maybe one of the few individuals that very happy for me to kind of go in this field. It started with, both my parents taught at Sunday school. So even in 1963, they used to drive from Chicago to Gary because that's where the MSA headquarters were. And they used to teach Sunday school there. So, Hamla later on in the 70s when I was born, and, in the 80s and 90s going to Sunday school, I used to complain. And my parents were like, all right, well, do something about it. This is all we know. So when I graduated eighth grade, Sunday school, and it was like 14, 15 years old, I became a teacher aide. I helped my mom's class. I went to Islamic studies class. And there I worked with youth groups and MSAs. And I've always had a liking with, working with individuals. And I think my parents were very active in the community, doing khidmat, service for the community. And so something my father said, why don't you go bring back, and I still remember, bring back the nobility in a noble profession. He goes, if you could, if you're going to do it, you got to go full force, just so people know that, hey, this is something we should think about going back to, as teaching was a very noble profession.
So Habib, I mean, I pretty much grew up in Chicagoland area, and to
Right.
me, the Kadri family is a very well-known family, almost like the royalty family of Chicago, especially the old MCC days. And I know many of your uncles and your family has contributed, so that's not a surprise to me. Uh, but did the thought ever cross your mind that when you were younger, that maybe I should, choose a different career, or were you from a very early age very driven that, hey, this is what I want to do, I want to be an educator and go in that line?
Uh, you know, by high school, I kind of told my father, hey, I was thinking about going into education. What you think? First my mom's like, maybe you could do it on the side, but I know that I wanted to go in a place where it could make impact, right? So and so I think that was there. Always when you're young, you played sports, basketball. You're like, man, you want to be an athlete, and those are just all those like dreams. But I realized sports became a vehicle for me to accomplish other things that bring more confidence in myself. But no, I really was, if it wasn't that, or might have been business, or I always wanted to go into like broadcasting and stuff. So those were kind of your side passions. I
Hmm.
remember even Azra Usman, both of us in college, because we went to college together. He took a class, and we used to do improv together, like at the colleges and
Wow.
back in high school at Minna camps and stuff. So we used to do a lot of improv skits. So I always wanted to go into improv, right? And I remember my father said, "You're going to be a jokester, you're going to be an educator," right? That was the only time he kind of vetoed. He said, "Like, better you could do it on the side. You can use your humor in teaching, but do not." I can't, this is one area that I would prefer you if you don't go into. So, but it was something funny. So both of us were kind of thinking. He took the improv classes and then the stand up comedy class, and so alhamdulillah, may Allah bless him, and I always, that he took that passion. So yeah, but always wanted to be around people, and so yeah, I would really say it was something that at least by my freshman sophomore year in college I already knew, and my parents were a-okay.
Yeah, no, I know Azhar as well, and inshallah, one of the days I might want to invite him as on our podcast as a speaker as well about his journey. But Habib, but let's just talk about your own resume now a little bit. I mean,
Yes.
I know you've been privileged to know you for a while, so I've kind of kept you very popular in the Chicago scene because this is your local market. But for those
Correct.
listeners of ours who are from all over the countries, or maybe some all over the world, just if you can walk us through whatever you feel comfortable in terms of where did you start, and then your journey up to this point in time, whatever you wish to share.
I mean, yeah, I was in the, Chicago and Detroit public schools, and then, the idea is that, I honestly thought about Islamic schools. So when I was coming back from Michigan, my wife was doing medical school, and I just did my grad work, and we were coming back to Chicago, and they had MCC Academy had 7 principals in the first 14 years, right? So Islamic schools were, especially in the 90s, as the growing pain years. And it was something that some of the community members like, "Hey, why don't you come to the Islamic school?" I asked my father. He said, "You make your decision if you want to." He goes, "If I am, I'm going to have to, I want to step away because I don't want anyone to feel like in any form of like my dad's involved in this conversation." So it was one of those that decided to go. Been there for about now, mashallah, 24 years. Alhamdulillah, it went well. We went from 170 to 900 kids now. So I've been in the Islamic school scene. I've also kind of worked at the national scene with a assistant at Council of Islamic Schools of North America, chair Minna Muslim Youth of North America. Alhamdulillah, Allah's blessed me where I work at the university. So my whole thing was, I want to be in the Islamic schools, but I want to make sure that I still kind of keep myself going. So I think that's where I've also teach at the university, where I'm at their advisory board in Cambridge at Harvard University, and I teach leadership in the summer programs. So, the last 2-3 years I've been, going to Qatar on behalf of their overseas programs that they have for the university. So a lot of my things, youth, are education. That's where I'm kind of at, written some books. So a lot of my work is in education from like the Minna youth side, from the educational side where teaching educators who educate kids, or then looking at curriculum and developing, rethinking Islamic studies, and not rethinking, but disseminating in a more different way. So I've trained educators, went to madrasas to teach over there to teachers, and really trying to just be a connector for all the educators throughout the United States. And alhamdulillah, even I've visited about 13 countries in their ministry. So alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen.
Excellent. No,
But Allah accepted. Again, I apologize. I don't. You asked, but I don't want to feel like I'm trying to
no.
talk about myself.
It's not. I mean, I know you far from one of the most humble people, but it's important to give people a little bit color on your background so they appreciate what are you going to say. That's why it was a little bit more. Yeah, I did want you to do a little bit of an infomercial about yourself because you are very accomplished. You're out and about traveling. You've written books, and I think a lot of us can learn. And gain wisdom from your knowledge experiences. I want to turn, Habib, to we have a lot of younger parents who are UIF clients, and obviously they've approached. They come to us for home financing, car financing, etc. But just in general, I'm sure because they're younger parents of younger children. I think you can advise them. So I wanted to start off by a little bit more advice for parents, and they're now dealing with kids and so forth, making a decision public school versus a private school, let's say. What are some of your thoughts in that regard? Like who are who's more suited, I guess. I mean, I'm kind of leaving it very broad over here for you to kind of fill in the blanks, if you will. But just some advice on parenting and then how what's better, how do you choose, and so forth.
Right. So for me, like first and foremost, parenting, the greatest gift that God has given our kids, right? So when you have a kid, the kids, so that at the same time, our children are our gift. But in from a faith perspective, Allah already also tells us in Surah Anam that they are also going to be a test, right? We will be tested or we will be questioned for the way our kids act and behave and what we have disseminated the information to them in the proper way. So I think one of the things is that knowing that we know that this is a gift and we have to be cherished. So it is time and effort, just like in school and stuff, whatever we have when Allah gives us some capabilities or skills is how do we implement that? So I think one of the first thing is being involved in your kid's life. I think it's, a lot of times people like, oh, back home, they're like, oh, our village took care of that. The fathers would stay away. Mom would take care of it. Here, I believe it's so important that moms and dads both need to be involved in the kids. I think lives. I think that's one. And each one has their specific task and no doubt about it. But I think it's so important to making sure, like I'm a big believer that fathers need to have a great relationship with their girls. Like I always remind my girls, I said, guess what? Remember who the first guy who ever loved you and the last guy is your Baba. Remember that, right? Like I want them to know that the first guy that ever hugged them was Baba, right? First guy ever kissed them on their, on the cheek is Baba, right? Because it is very important to making sure that they have that relationship. And if we look through our Prophet Sallallahu, you saw that the Prophet would, when he saw his wife, daughter Fatima, he would kiss her on the cheek. When she came in, he would stand up and have her sit where she sat. So this idea of this, our deen is so beautiful about the closeness of our kids with our parents with their kids, where sometimes I feel culture kind of slides that away. And so I think that becomes one. So closeness is number one. Number two is that when you have time, it's a giving quality time, right? It's really to making sure it's not interrupted. It's not like a dinner time where everyone's on their phones. And really, even if that means it's just 30 minutes, right? I'm a person about small consistency, but doing it daily and by being consistent. So if that means, when we grew up, a lot of times you would say, Markham time, got to be home. Dinner time, everyone's sitting at the house. Baba's home. We're sitting and eating, right? I think now everyone's always busy. Everyone's like eating at separate times or the TV's on. I think really having quality time is number two, plays a big part. Number three, the greatest form of learning is what they see and hear, right? William Glasser talks about how people retain information. 50% is what they see, 70% is what they discuss, 80% was what they experience. So what they're seeing and hearing at home in mom and dad's relationship is going to be a big situation of how kids are going to pick up stuff, right? What they're going to learn. So if you're going to think if Salah is important, if they don't see mom and dad pray Salah, then they're that. If reading is important, that's going to be it. If community activism is important, they're going to see that. If good character is that, they're going to see how mom and dad react with their friends, how they talk with their own parents, all these factors, right? So what they see and hear and discuss, so important to making sure that we're modeling them, like role modeling for them. And then lastly, I would say is making sure that we're there for open communication, right? Which is huge, that you have to have them where they need to seek support. A lot of times that we say, no, you want to hear, tell me anything. And right when they say something, we just yell and we argue. Then the kids are like, I'm never going to go talk to them. And I'm a big believer, you rather have them be your access. Like when we wrote the book, War Within the Hearts, right, the struggles of the Muslim youth about dating, clubs, and all that, because I had those questions. But I would feel uncomfortable to ask my parents or I might ask the sheikh. But if kids don't ask, if you don't have an access, they're going to go to Google, Sheikh Google, which is not always going to be the greatest place to find answers. So I think that plays a big part. I mean, there's a lot, but I'm just trying to, these were at least four things I would say, at least first start off with to keep in mind.
So Habib, when we were when I had young kids and so forth, I mean, thankfully, my daughters, they didn't really pose any challenge. Both daughters are great and are doing well. But the question I had was, there was sometimes ran into people, they yanked their kids out of public school because they were getting into some tough situations. They're like, oh, we're going to send them to an Islamic school now, as if like that would be a cure for whatever the home environment was, etc. So did you encounter any of that, like kids joining in midstream and then issues arising and stuff, and how did you tackle with some of those issues that came up?
Right. I mean, I think that what I think Islamic schools now have developed from 1989. Now it's like 20, 30 years, 35. So it started from maybe five. And in Chicago, there's about 14 to 15 schools. So maybe it has one of the, just in Chicago land I'm talking about. So I think that's kind of opened up more and more schools. And so they've gone through some growing pains, and some of the new schools are going through that. So I think one of the things is now you have schools where they're still academically doing well, plus you can give them an environment and opportunity to learn the faith. Now you might have some parents who are like, okay, now my child's struggling, and now we're going to just send them to an Islamic school and now it's going to fix them. Just like any Islamic school, there's still going to be challenges of kids, right? The social, emotional, cognitive, spiritual. But I think one of the things is that just like any other school, we were going to first go ahead and do like interview. Do you feel like you want to come? What's your purpose? You want to be here? Are you going to give it a chance, right? And I think those are kind of opportunities that have to happen. And I think for more than ever before, look, we have to realize in any generation, what's happens. The first generation that comes to a new country, it's their language goes away. And we've seen many of our individuals who Southeast Asian, Autumn, the language together. Second, you'll see culture. Third is faith, right? So what you want to make sure is that by the third generation, that faith has not gone away. And can you have at least a process of about 6 to 8 hours where there's an opportunity to still have academic needs taken care of, but there's the spiritual and the sense of from religious class, from Arabic class, or Quran class, to the morning du'as, to the daily salah, and building a confident individual Muslim. Especially, I think in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of challenges from a moral compass, morality aspect of it, from a political standpoint from it. So I think more and more, I think it's not no more what it used to be, like, oh, there's a problem. I think that's changed. Now you got big waiting lists in almost every Islamic school. There's a waiting list of people coming. I think people's eyes have opened up that how much, even when I grew up to Sunday school, people were like, oh yeah, we're okay. I'm like, really? We only know like 10 surahs when we graduated Sunday school. And some people only pray consistently 5 daily prayers if faith is important. And that's what I think we have to look at. If we want to make sure that we want the best in this world and the best in the hereafter, we go to great school districts to make sure our kids are successful. But at the same time, if we want our kids to be successful in the hereafter, what steps are we doing? Even if God doesn't want us to do it, do 40% of what we do on the academic scenes, right? And I think those are things now I've seen more and more people are rethinking, where that issue before it was just a place to be a cocoon of religious studies. I think it's changed now. Especially schools have been now, like, you have about 5, 6 big schools who've been here for about more than 25 years. That's changed because academically they've done well. The kids have done well in colleges, graduating, but still have some form of foundation. And again, but a lot of this also happens when it's at home, right? Whatever you can learn, if you don't reinforce it at home, then it just becomes a class assignment, or it becomes hypocrisy where parents are telling you to do this, but at home they're not doing it. So there's a lot to that, but there's some things to just kind of think about.
So one of the questions that, or at least I would say criticism that is leveled against Islamic schools more so, I think, is, maybe it's because of the lack of resources and the priority, sports and other things have a lesser of a priority, and we're trying to create these supercharged kids. You have that whole tiger mom syndrome. We've heard of that, with the moms just really pushing their kids to excel, extra classes, Kuman, this, that, and the other. So if you can touch upon about this criticism, whether is it valid, number one, and number two, your thoughts about having kids attend these other outside classes to hopefully excelling them. So just thoughts on that in general.
Yeah. So the first part of it, let's take academics. Look, in anything, if anything you do a lot more of, you'll become better, right? Like, they have the power of 100. If you do something for 18 hours every single day, that you're going to be at least in the top 25%, right? But if you then they have what's called mastery of more than 10,000 hours. But if you get to 3,000 hours of anything, you're going to become better. So my whole thing is that if kids who read 20 minutes every day after school, right, to 40 minutes, there's a kids who read about 20 minutes score in the top 50 to 70 percentile. And they've done research on this. And kids who read about 30, 40% for entertainment, for learning, or just for enjoying, they're going to score higher in their reading scores, right? And even in standardized test scores, because now they're building their comprehension skills, their understanding, their inferences. In sports, if you just say, I'm just going to go to gym class or whatever I learn, but if you want to be greater, it's the ones who practice afterwards for another 10 minutes at practice, or 20 minutes afterwards, or at home, whatever, instrument, art, anything you do, if you don't put more extra time, if you want to become the top 15, 20 percentile of something that you, of any subject matter or area or skill set. But the idea is making sure that when you have those tiger moms where it's constantly, this is what you have to do, and you burn someone out, or you get them where they're not happy doing it, or they get frustrated, or they have anxiety of doing this. That's the process, and saying there are certain things we're going to be good at, and some kids are not going to be good at. And we have to kind of understand that. And we got to look at where our kids' talents are good at and if they like and say, okay, how do we help push that and excel that? But there are some foundational things like reading and mathematics from a religious perspective, faith and Quran, that if we just have like once a week teaching reading Quran, that's not going to be suffice if you don't have someone at least reading every single day. Because my whole thing is that we will never let, and I'm giving you both sides on this. From the academic side, you want our kids to be successful, so sometimes you have to do a little bit more than just the norm. You see right now in America, more than 85% graduate high school. Only 68% go to college. Only 32% graduate from college. They're not setting kids up to be successful. If it wasn't for overseas students, and especially grad school, they would be in trouble, all the universities in America, right? So there's this idea of like some of that old is gold is not bad, but how do you keep that balance? We don't have that pendulum where it's like hardcore extreme or hardcore relax, like no more homework. I'm a big believer that there has to be a balance, and every day, even if a kid has a habit of 5, 10, even a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, getting, like learning a few packets, I think that's great. But the idea, it's not all cognitive, the social and the emotional, going out to play, hands-on, arts and crafts. Those are huge. I'm a big believer that we got to, like sports. My daughters all play sports. I think it's a big perspective. The same aspect of it from a religious standpoint is that, hey, why are we not just kind of saying, hey, once a week or twice a week and saying how you will never be okay with a kid reading English, a high school kid reading fourth grade level of English, like that reading level, like that fluency. But why is it we have 20-year-old, 22-year-olds who read Quran maybe like a fourth grade level, right? And we're like, hey, nothing's wrong, knowing that that's going to be the language of Jannah, right? So I'm one of those kind of like always looking at like, okay, are we doing enough at both sides? Where academics, we have that. Now, every kid's not going to be cognitively strong. So we have the vocational skill sets, we have others, but whatever they're good at, we have to provide that they have to do that extra effort. Especially just in a lot of generations, the kids don't have motivation anymore. You'll see a lot of in our communities, the same 25, 26, when a lot of us were graduated and already working because we saw the parents struggle, because they're financially well, you got 26-year-old, 27-year-old kids still trying to, at their house, trying to figure out what they want to do because they're trying to get that quick gratification, instant money, right? They're going to go, oh, this new big thing. I'm going to go into this. I'm going to be the influencer. I'm just going to play the stock market. I'm in crypto, and it's going to be like this quick fix. So I'm a big believer that we got to have that balance where because some of us grew up with our parents being really tough, the pendulum swung too much to the other side.
Right.
So,
No, it's a great answer. Omar, as a matter of fact, before joining UIF, came from the education background. So, Omar, I'm going to let you handle some of those questions about you have some questions about the schools and the education organization. So, go ahead, Omar, please.
Yeah, appreciate that, Jazz. Yeah, so Habib, I mean, we had touched on that. I mean, I came over to UIF, having taught a couple of years at a local Islamic school in Florida. So, got to see the ins and outs, the challenges that our Islamic schools here in the U.S. are going through, have gone through. And definitely, I think overall we're going in a positive direction, alhamdulillah, and I think that's great. But just for those educators who are out there who are listening, parents who are listening to our show today, what advice do you have for our religious institutions that have Islamic schools, whether they're Sunday, weekend schools or full time schools, to improve and to get better?
yeah, no, first and foremost, I think everyone has to realize that word. We have to every year look at how do we keep on getting better. We got to get more professional. I have the opportunity to go visit like Exeter, the oldest, like elementary middle school. It's a private, boarding school now. So I've tried to go visit like top school districts just to be like, okay, what do they do? And for how does Andover and Harvard, Andover, Exeter, slowly transition to Harvard? How does Harvard become Harvard? How does Notre Dame become Notre Dame? How does any of these top universities, they all went through the growing pains, right? And we have to realize, just like in India, Aligarh, Osmania were really recognized in the 40s and 50s. Azhar was in Morocco, what Fatima al-Fihri did. There, in Timbuktu in Africa, it was known that, hey, this is the movers and the shakers of the world were Muslims. And I think I always tell people our faith tells us to be good. Like I have sometimes this thing of being religious does not mean that academically you don't not do well. And I think this is where we have to excel. And I always tell Islamic schools this. I said, think about from all the supplications that we know, from driving a car, going to the bathroom, to the Rabbana du'as, the 40 du'as. There's so many supplications for everything, right? Going to sleep, waking up. And if you go to, inshallah, Allah gives all the people who are listening to opportunity to go to Umrah and Hajj. When you put on your ihram, and I want just to think about this, you put on your ihram and you say, labbaik Allahumma labbaik, alhamdulillah, where I'm here, my Lord. And when you go to Masjid al-Haram, you're not supposed to pray any salah. They tell you to go and do tawaf. And I want us to think about this. The scholars say that when you go there, the Prophet said, make any dua you like. But for every circuit, the last part of every circuit, the Prophet told us to make this one dua. Now, I want us to think about this one dua, right? For all the listeners here, think about this. That the Prophet said, when you come to ask Allah for complete forgiveness and all the stuff, make any dua, but don't forget the last part of every circuit from the Yemeni corner to Hazrat al-Aswad, that you make dua, Rabbana, our Lord, Atina, give us, fid dunya, in this world, hasanatun, good things, wa fil akhirah, at the end of hereafter, hasanatun, good things, wa qina adhaban nar, and save us from the hellfire. That Allah wants us to get the best in this world. There's nothing wrong to have the best car, the nice clothes, nice shoes. There's nothing wrong. And I want us to realize that our schools have to excel to get better and better, because you don't want our kids to feel like, when we go to religious institution, we have to make sacrifices. No doubt about it. There are going to be moments, but the idea is that we as Islamic schools have to be like, okay, a lot of our kids now, our parents, have went to schools in America. They see other options. So we have to step up our game. And I think that is it's something that we have to do from an academic standpoint, but then also from a facility standpoint, and from also like the spiritual aspect, but the athletics, right? Like for us, like athletics is big. The last 2-3 years, our girls volleyball team in the state of Illinois in high school have gone to the regional finals in the state, like they were on CBS News last year. Our boys lost in the regional finals in the state. A few years ago, we got to the sectionals in the state, right? If we don't add things like that, now we have, mashallah, like you have like CPSA, Universal, they've gone to like in academics all the way down to the state. Like we've gone to opportunities like mock trials. We have to make sure that no one ever thinks that, hey, we are going back to what our tradition was to excel in everything, especially in the academia side. And I think we have to not use faith as an excuse to, for mediocrity, which sometimes I feel people started doing in 89. And we know we have to grow because there were growing pains. But I think now we have to say, look, where do we put our investments, building endowments, looking at how do we get our talent, how do we make our kids, teachers stay in talents. And I always realize now it's going to be salary, but if people feel heard, they feel valued, and they feel like they could grow, people will go above and beyond to go ahead and give that option to go and do a lot more. So I know it's kind of long-winded, but I thought it was
No,
a very
definitely.
solid question.
I think that's fantastic, Habib. That was my experience in the Islamic school I was at is, in Florida where I was teaching. The idea was, led by the principal who was there at the time, Sister Leila Shatara. I don't know if you know her, but she's
Yes.
a friend of mine. Yeah, I know she's pretty well known nationally now, mashallah. Shout out to Sister Leila. She was an amazing leader there, and she had the school going in a fantastic direction, and and now she's doing things on a national level to help the Islamic schools out, and I think that's fantastic. But going to the next topic, Habib, for the Islamic schools, you mentioned certain things here just now. What advice do you have for the students, who are looking to follow, in someone's footsteps like yourself, or who are trying to get into education and think this is their calling? What are the pros and cons? What should they be prepared for? In such a career, like what should they expect? And what would your advice in general be to them?
Yeah, and I always tell kids and anything that they're going into, first of all, anything that we do, we just got to max out for the full force. If you're going to a field of education, and I think what it is just like any other aspect, like when you go through the process, get the certificate, it helps you, gives you value. Even if you're doing student teaching in the public school, so you can see other sides, experience both sides. I think it's going to be there. We need teachers in the public school arena too, right? And Islamic schools. So I'm a big believer. Wherever you go, we got to start building and just be good, right? Because the greatest form of dawah, I believe, is interaction and the people learning. And that when people want to be like, yeah, when you go to a Muslim teacher, that's a solid person. Muslim lawyer, that's a solid person. Mechanic, that person's going above and beyond. And I think that becomes a mentality, right? So I think I'm a big believer for kids in anything that we do. I feel like 5 areas that kids have. One is cognitively, we have to strive to excel in whatever it is. As long as, there's a motto at our school, we say, do your best, Allah will take care of the rest. The question now, we all might not get straight A's. Like, my dad was an engineer and my work subject was math. So, but the question my father asked, did you try your best, right? And that's the question that we have to all. So I'll say, whatever field that your kids, anyone who's listening or your parents, have them habits of being consistent and trying to always strive to maximize their potential. Number two, we got to get our kids to be socially active, right? If you want to be a teacher, you got to learn how to deal with people. And especially now with this whole phones generation, their social skills are really not the same levels as I would say a previous generation before. Some might be just after influencers, but really like not just presenting, but really getting to know, talk to people, dealing with situations, dealing with criticism. So socially is the other thing. Third is emotionally getting kids strong, right? Sometimes you give a helicopter parent to a point where you don't let them do anything and learn. It's okay to have failure. It's how do you learn how do you build grit? How do you build taking criticism? How do you build to work hard because things don't always come easy? Because even popcorn, right? Everything within 2 minutes. Fast food, you want it quick. When our team when the phone takes 3 minutes or like 1 minute to download, you're like, man, what's wrong with it, right? We're a generation that they don't have. I tell parents kids need to learn how to be bored. They need to learn how to be bored, right? And so that's that emotional aspect that we need to do. The other thing is, I believe health-wise, we need to make sure our kids are eating better and exercising every day, right? We have this thing like, oh my God, he's so cute. You look how cute. I'm like, no, you're building. That's fine, but you gotta when he's 2-3 year olds, cute is not going to be great cute when they're 13, 14. Again, if someone has some situation, may Allah make it easy. But how do we help kids where they don't get into a situation where now they're having self-esteem issues? So as parents, young age, when you see stuff, it is so important to kind of build that. So, and we're going in the field of education or whatever fields, these ideas, cognitive, socially, emotionally, it's not just, oh, God, he gets straight A, everything's fine. No, these other factors are going to be very important than ever before. And I think that's some skill sets I think will be very important in whatever fields you do, especially if you're going in the field of education, because you got to go 180 days dealing with kids every day. And I think more parents respect teachers more than ever before after COVID, when they had their kids there every single day for
That's for
180
sure.
days. So then they finally start realizing why teachers get spring break and winter break off.
Oh
Summer.
yeah, definitely. We had a snow day today here in Dallas, kind of because it was like negative temperatures here, like surprisingly. And my
Yes.
wife and me were just like, "Oh my God, like these guys are here again!" Like it's they were just off for President's Day for 4 days,
Yes.
and then you have another day off. I was like, "Oh my God, like we needed things to go back to normal here," But no, definitely 100% right about that, Habib. I think the parents really after COVID especially were like juggling work from home and having to make sure their kids were also paying attention on their laptops and stuff, right? So definitely tough. So we had just going in a slightly different direction, right? Like on an institutional level, right? But we had a large Islamic center here in Dallas just closed on a commercial property with UIF recently. And their plan was to use it as an endowment, specifically for that, like rent it out. It's a large commercial property. So what should if we have board members for Islamic schools and different nonprofits listen in onto this podcast, what advice do you have for them in terms of endowments, how to plan for the future to grow their organization on a large scale? What advice would you have for them, Habib?
I think one of the big things is a fiscal responsibility and really planning things, well. Right? So we have an outside auditor every year. If we plan our budgets better and kind of look at, so even when the school when I came to, it was over $300,000 in deficit. How about we were able to balance the budget, build up like an endowment of $800,000, we use it to buy another building. How about we build up another $800,000 endowment? Inshallah, I'll give it more. But the idea is that kind of planning through, right? And that's why structuring and stuff. So how about like even when and people are like, well, schools can't do it. I said, like, it can be done. Like, we gotta not believe it's happened. So for like it can't happen. So when we won like Hamla, like Hamla Rabbil Alameen, like we were talking about the things that accomplished, was like winning the National Principal Award. They had looked at categories and saying, okay, from a financial perspective, how do we do? Academically, should we show growth, right? We showed growth from teacher retention, student retention, after school programming. What it is I'm a believer. What we did at our schools from 2002 was every 5 years have a 5-year plan. 2012 we had a 2018 plan. 2022 now we have a Vision 2030. The idea is that if you don't have plans to kind of say what are we going to do from a financial perspective, where can we pick and choose that? A lot of times schools are like, okay, inshallah, we're just going to fundraise. Yeah, we have to fundraise, but if you could do line item budgeting better and figure out where and that extra money you could start putting endowments for capital projects, for staff salary increases for staff. Those are going to be game changers, right? And because even our beautiful staffs know that, look, we're not going to always maybe get paid the same amount, but you are valuing us, and every year we're going to try to do something. So from a climate and culture perspective, we're going to try to value you, but also, from a financial, we're going to try to do stuff and show people like we're looking into this to help make the facility better for parents, making after-school programs better, looking at ways to generate money, like having school nights at restaurants every month, or renting out your gym, or running after-school activities where we could generate money, like a win-win situation. That preparation and planning, I think, is one of the key factors that a lot of times we go by emotions and we don't always go by thinking using data-driven decisions.
Right. Habib, real quick, one follow-up question. I know it's like kind of a chicken and egg question, right? But sometimes I think, is it better for our Islamic institutions, like, Islamic schools, for example, is it sometimes better to just purchase a property, like a rental property or some type of endowment first before jumping into starting the school so you don't have to keep relying on donation? I mean, what's your take on that?
I mean, I think there's two aspects. If a school's connected to the masjid and there's this like at least a form of a relationship and maybe some financial support and then like community support, then that makes it easier. If you're going independently, look, I know education is not a financial like. If you're doing it, it's not going to be a financial business model. Now, sometimes I
Right.
know they have the charter process, and there are ways that can happen. But I think a lot of times in some schools, because you're also trying to like we're believe like our school is 900 kids, 56 different countries, but our socioeconomic status and religious views might be very vast. We're right like right on the north side of Chicago, so it's very diverse. But we wanted to make sure that this was not going to be just for the people who have money to come to school.
Right.
Now, when you have that thought process, then like the salaries are going, tuitions are going to be a little bit lower, or we're going to give 20, 30% of discounts. That becomes a thing. So that's why I think a lot of it is also like, what's going to be the vision of the school? What kind of a group of, what's the demographics of students that we're trying to get at? That's going to play a part because that's going to figure out like, okay, which angle can you do? And can we financially be fiscally responsible or fiscally able to bring quality education at the same time, keep things going.
Okay. I appreciate that, Habib. Ijaz, do you want to take the next set of questions here?
Yeah, yeah. No, I do. Thank you. A lot of good information here. Habib, I want to dive into your book. I'm a big reader, and I had a chance to review some of the notes on your book, the different chapters and so forth. Very, very intriguing, interesting. But I know you probably have authored several books from my understanding, but let's talk about the most recent book, The Prophetic Leadership. Tell us a little bit about that journey. Like what made you write this specific book and some of the lessons from that book you want to share with the audience?
Alhamdulillah, Allah's given me, I think, like mashallah, Allah accept the thing, but, I've been opportunities to kind of be in some form of leadership, from youth groups at the MSAs, working in groups. And a lot of times, I've always like went to like leadership courses, like reading, I've read quite a bit, from, John Maxwell, all these different groups of people, good to great and looking at people who are successful. Like I love reading like biographies of people, like, what makes a great coach, what made a great military leader, Bruce Lee and multiple science. Like I've always kind of read people in their fields, like went above and beyond, like what makes that happen, what makes it click. But one of the things I realized, and alhamdulillah, the opportunity of working at a university where I teach leadership to a lot of principals who are already 5-6 years or overseas, even to training young principals. So when I've realized, and you go through the seerah of the Prophet, I'm like, man, he himself was a great leader. And so my thought was to go through the seerah of the Prophet and kind of take lessons that what sometimes already related. So the first chapters, I was like, okay, what does research show about what great leaderships are, right? What are the characteristics? And I just connected to what the Prophet already did. Then we just went through the seerah of the prophet. So I'll give you an example. We'll take like one of the first chapters we talk about the prophet. One of the first things we know how the revelation started, that the prophet had a revelation. So he would seclude himself. Now you think about all leaders. What did they say? Hey, mindfulness. The leaders, you need to have some time just for yourself to rethink, to re-energize. That's why sometimes you see a lot of leadership books talk about wake up in the morning when there's no one there. You get to yourself, take care of yourself. The prophet used to walk to the cave. That's not an easy walk if you've ever gone there. So you have to be in good health. So leadership has that, right? So I talk about, hey, staying in good shape, taking time to meditate and just kind of reflect on yourselves and taking care of yourself. If you want to take care of others, you got to first take care of yourself. Third, over there, the idea of Iqra, read. The idea of Allah, to know Allah is one of the big things as leaders. We got to keep on learning. Just because we're in charge of something doesn't mean that we know it all. We have to keep on learning from the people under us, people with us, some colleagues, and people who maybe know more than us or have more experience from us, right? Like one of the other parts, I'm just kind of making it quick, points here, but the other one over there is after the revelation, that one chapter we talk about, it says, oh, wait, where does, he's frightened. He doesn't know what to do. He thinks something bad has happened to him. He goes, and who does he go to get support? He goes to his wife. So for leaders, it's so important that if we're going to take care of others, we need to make sure we take care of ourselves, right? And our families, right? Our families, you got to have that. You have to have someone to be a rock, right? And so, so a lot of the whole book is to go through all the Sierra points and how we could learn as individuals, leaders. So we take it in 3 points. We take it, your leadership at home, right? Mom, dad, whoever, because we're all there, at work, and in your personal life. So each story, I kind of talk about, hey, on these 3 different areas of how you could kind of pick up stuff. So it really was making sure that, hey, a lot of that we learn it's from the greatest of men, the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Yeah. No, some of the books you mentioned, Good to Great, etc. I mean, I'm a big reader, and again, autobiography. Same. I mean, currently I'm reading simultaneously, listening to the Sam Walton's book about how he built Walmart, and I'm reading hard copy of Mitt Romney and his journey, and it's very, very interesting. Just, and again, whether you agree or disagree with people's perspectives, I think that's less important. It's more important that what you can gain out and the different perspective you gain by reading the leadership autobiographies of different leaders. So I'm with you on that, and I think if I plan on reading your book in full detail, I'm going to order my copy. So to order the copy of your book, is it just go on Amazon, or is it a particular website?
Yeah. So Iqra Bookstore, as you know, they're the ones who kind of published it. So Iqra Bookstore has it, I think, and I think now they're putting it on Amazon because we just got it out last month. It's going to be going official. Like we haven't even publicized it yet, but yeah. So I just finished.
If you Google search Habeeb Quadri with your name, and then I'm sure they can pop up.
So if you go to Iqra Bookstore right now, it should be there. I think for sure, and I think now they set it up on Amazon too.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I think it's probably a fabulous read. So I highly recommend, with your experience and knowledge and the research you probably put behind this, I couldn't recommend this book more, I'm sure, for our community members. We can start wrapping up. I think we covered a lot of topics. We can probably talk to you, Habib, for another 2.5 hours, I'm sure. But I think in a podcast format, we got to start wrapping it up here. So I'm going to go ahead. Umar, I know you wanted to kind of lead off with the conclusion and wrapping up. So take it from here, please.
Yeah. Before I wrap up, they where can our listeners, if they want to find out more information, Habib, like about your work, your books and things, you were saying just to Google, and is there any website or anything that you have?
HQEC.net. So we're kind of updating so what we're going to try to do is make all of our videos and education. We're putting it in one place. So I'm kind of working on that right now. But if you, Facebook, Habeeb Quadri, I have some articles up there I kind of write out, and it's kind of blasted through. So a lot of times I work with organizations, so a lot of stuff are through them. If you ever want to just contact me, hqec29@gmail.com.
Habib, I'm sorry, very quickly. So just so people can understand, so HQC, H is Habib, Q is Kadri, E as in education, C as in Charlie. Correct? That's .net.
Yes.
Is that the website, or okay?
Yeah. So HQEC.net. And my cell phone, if any educators, anything you need to talk, Also,
I'm sure they can find you from there. I'd rather keep that information.
Yep.
But I'm sure they can email you from there. And anytime people can reach us, even at UIF, we have our own, info at.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, what is it? Feedback at myuif.com?
Feedback at myuif.com.
Yeah, and then we can always connect Habib as well if people have an inquiry in inviting Habib to speak or talk or chat, whatever. We can do that. Go ahead, Habib. Anything else you want to add to that, or?
No. I think it's in any way. I'm just excited to give you guys giving me an opportunity to speak, and I know that short notice. I apologize if I was a little fast, but trying to get some points across.
It's really our pleasure. It's really our pleasure, Habib. It's been awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll wrap up over here, Umar, and then go ahead and wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it. Thanks again, Habib. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's episode of the UIF Community Podcast. We really hope you found today's discussion to be insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this podcast with others in your community and your network. And also, if you have a chance, please check out our website at myuif.com for more information on our Islamic financing and savings accounts programs. Until next time, this is Umar Subhani signing off. Salam and take care.